We end this MOOC before ruin descends upon Japan once again, as it had in 1923, only this time it's ruin following Japan's defeat in a truly aggressive, atrocious war that it launched beginning in China in 1937, that it extended to include the Western powers, Pearl Harbor, the United States, Singapore, Southeast Asia, Britain, bring in the Allied powers. This was a horrendous war, and it was really a war of never the twain shall meet. It was truly a Manichaean conflict, and it was a Manichaean conflict on both sides. The Western powers spoke of the Japanese as monkey men, ape men. Unlike ourselves, the Japanese spoke of the Anglo-American powers as demonic, devilish. The hatred in that period was enormous, and the sense of difference was enormous. And the death toll was enormous. The number of people who died in China, the estimates now range from 13 million to 20 million killed in that war. In Japan itself, 2 million soldiers and sailors were killed, close to 1 million non-military Japanese were killed in the bombings, in attempting to come back from overseas places like Manchuria. The sense of bitter enemies was intense. The war propaganda emphasized this. And when the war ended, it went away, pretty much. And they set about rebuilding the country. Some of the dreams and ideals that we saw in the 30s have an opportunity to flourish. Certainly artists, writers, other people are liberated from the military oppression. And so it's complicated to wrestle with. If you're Chinese, if you're Southeast Asian, you would still, to the present day, be inundated with recollections of Japanese atrocities. They were terrible. But at the same time, the same people who might have done this, the same country that engaged in this, set off again in reconstruction, and with a whole new set of ideals. And I think you look at this and you can say, well, there's reasons for despair here, there's reasons for anger here, and there's reasons for hope. And you can tap in your past certain strains and you can pull them up. And I think what we saw here was a resilience and a positive sense of reconstruction, creating the good city, creating the good life that has dominated much of Japan since the war.
I'm a post-war baby, but just barely. 1946, so my dad was a vet. And my boyhood, like a lot of boyhoods in the late 40s and early 50s, was about reliving the war, learning about your father, playing soldier. But that created in our generation the idea that this barbarous nation fought us, and now they're like us again.
You can be misled by this, MOOC, is that we're looking at Tokyo. And Tokyo is the modern metropolis. This is the center of modernity and urbanization.
Right.
This is where the modern girl, the modern boy, the cafes, the films, the whole lore of a modern consumer culture was developing in this period. At the same time, much of the country elsewhere, particularly in the countryside, was impoverished and miserable. And life was very, very hard for many people. And you always have to keep that in mind. In other VC units, we have units on labor protest in Japan in the 1920s and 30s. Dramatic left-wing posters of life in the 30s, conflicts of a different sort, not sanguine and more positive as in here. It's a very complex, conflictual society, but this goes against the stereotype because everyone knows Japan is a harmonious, consensual society, and that stereotype is simply, it's not entirely wrong, but it's terribly misleading.
When I visit Tokyo now, especially since we've been working on these programs, I can't help but think, I'm in the city where all of these things happened. Where are we now in this narrative? It's a magical city. I often think this is the city of the future. And I look forward to doing the next series on Tokyo 20 years from now.
Well, thank you all. Thank you for staying with us. We hope it's been an instructive and an enlightening journey. We hope that you'll be able to do many such excursions and explorations in the future.
Thank you very much.